what's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Battlefield Project podcast. I'm your host, Matthew Rhoda, and this is the podcast for people who understand that life is a battle and only the strong will thrive. I am joined by my very first ever return guest is probably the way I should put that. Ross, you were my first. You were one of like top five.
Yeah, one of the
guests, like one of the
third.
very first. Yeah. And he talked about some challenges, battles that he's experienced in his life. And then I don't know how long ago was it that the bigger one just happened. That was less than a month ago. It's very recent, 2 months ago.
It was end of December.
Okay. Yeah. So 2.5 months. He lost his mother tragically in a car accident. And I was talking to him, and he was like, man, like if you really want to like get into like a battle, like that's a much bigger one than the ones I talked about on the show in the first episode that I was on. So I was like, dude, let's get back on here because it's something I hope not everybody's experienced, but everybody probably will experience it at some point, is the loss of a parent. It's extremely difficult. I lost my dad not last summer, this previous summer, to a long battle with dementia. So it's not as new to me, but it's still pretty recent. So I felt the pain that he was going through, and I understood kind of the hardship of that moment and that struggle that kind of sticks with you for quite some time. So I was just like, let's get on and talk about what that's like and how you get through it and how you find silver linings. So there's really no specific structure to this episode, like there is a little bit more to the other ones that I have. But I just wanted to get on here. I think it's going to be good for you, for me, to just kind of talk through these things. And then for anyone listening, if you're struggling with the recent loss of a parent or loss of a parent in the past, or God forbid, like you lost a kid or a brother or sister, like any loss really, and how you navigate through that and kind of find your strength through those pains and sorrows. Because I think that's, like I always say, the point of life is you're going to get knocked down, you're going to get punched in the gut. The winners and the happy people are ones that are able to find that silver lining, find that peace, and fight their way through those battles and come out stronger on the other side. So even with loss of parents and stuff like that, as tragic as it is and as heartbreaking as it is possible to fight your way through that and to come out stronger on the other side. So Ross, go for it, man. I mean, as much as you want to share kind of just what happened. I think I was at your mother's service, and I think I don't call it speech, but the talk, or what I don't know how you label the conversation.
Eulogy, I don't know.
Yeah, eulogy, whatever it was, where you got up and kind of honored your mother and shared some of her story, and was really touching. And I think if you are willing and able to share that on this, the part that really like struck a chord with me and got me was when you talked about her angel that was with her during that, and like how basically she created a scenario in her life where it all unfolded and kind of took place the way I think that she would have wanted it to happen if it was going to happen. So that to me was like one of those like holy crap moments, like how powerful is the human consciousness and like the ability to create your own reality. So yeah, share whatever you want, man. I'll chime in when I feel inspired to do so, and maybe I'll bring it into my dad's situation a little bit because similarities and differences. But let's just jam out and talk about loss.
Yeah, man. I will say that one of the main reasons I reached out to you to want to do a do-over or like a return is because I think we had our first episode in October.
Yeah.
And I want to say that I had only thought of one time I had serious loss, and that put me in almost a downward spiral where I got sick and I went through a breakup and I had bad grades and I had social pressure, and all like one loss of a close relative put me in such a headspace that like 6 months of my life were rock bottom at that time.
Yeah.
And I want to say a week or two after our episode, my godmother, my mother's closest sister, died like randomly in an armchair. So that was like, I was sitting at this desk getting a call from my cousin, and she's crying and she's telling me the news, and I'm just like, what? And it was one of those losses where we had such a good relationship and we had such peace that it was like, I didn't feel like there was like any open-ended part of our relationship. If she was to go in end of 2019, we would have had closure at any point. Like we were cool, we were tight. And she struggled with a long battle of addiction and with health problems, mental and physical. And her peaceful passing in an armchair was almost like, okay, that is exactly how she would have wanted to go.
Yeah.
if that makes sense. So like
Totally.
there was grief and sadness and sorrow for that, but she was a closer family member than even my uncle at the point, because she was like my quote unquote godmother. So if anything
Yeah.
happened to my parents, like I became Bruce Wayne Batman,
Yeah.
I'm going to Canada, I have to live with her,
Yeah.
and her children were like my closest siblings because I never had
Yeah.
any sisters, but my cousins were like my older sisters.
Yeah.
So yeah, my mom went through that, and then um a couple weeks later, I'm starting this entrepreneurial journey on my own for the very first time. I would say I burned the ships in harbor, and I'm just like, it's full send plan A. There's no,
Yep.
like, I had no intention of any plan B's. And I'm getting incorporated, doing the bank account, operating agreement, doing the business plan, prospecting, all the work that a Chivo, as Jeff G would say, would do to try and run like a solo business. And I'm just, like, I know there's a deadline when finances are going to start getting tough, and there's a lot of pressure with a newborn kid, and I'm trying
Mm-hmm.
to be the best dad ever. So I don't think I processed that grief fully. I
Mm-hmm.
think I kind of pushed it down, and I was like, all right, well, she's in Canada. It's kind of far from home. It's close to my heart, but far from me physically.
Yeah.
Like we didn't talk for maybe a year or two. And if we did, it was a phone call here and there.
Yeah.
And then my grandmother passed in December. So she was, for a lot of people that have either busy parents or stuff going on at home, their grandparents help. My grandma was for a long time my closest confidant, my closest person.
Yeah.
So I told you about the struggle in college, but I spoke at her funeral, which maybe was harder than speaking at my mother's,
Yeah.
because of just the sheer formality of it and the sheer, like, I'm still now in the process of healing of it.
Mm-hmm.
That was a couple of weeks ago, and my grandmother was like my role model, and she was like the main cheerleader. Like my mom was a disciplinarian, like, hey, I'm gonna hold you accountable, be tough on you.
Yep.
My grandma was like, oh, you messed up, that's
You're
all right,
still the
you're a
best.
boy,
Yeah.
the best. Oh, you're going through like borderline like substance like misuse, and you're using substances, a gray area. Oh
Mm-hmm.
well, your dad used to party, and back in my day, drinking and driving wasn't illegal,
Yeah.
like that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So she made me lunch every day for an entire summer when I was at rock bottom. We just got so close.
Yeah.
I would take an hour lunch break when it was supposed to be half an hour, did not care about my job, used it as an excuse to hang out with my grandma. And we developed a really, really, really tighter relationship. We were close before, but we were tight, tight, tight then. And it's one of those things about loss where, you know, they were in their mid to late 70s, and the '08 housing crisis hit and real estate got bad, and they had lived in a condo for a couple years. They're like, okay, we're going to be doing this like active, like slowed down 55 and up community crap. And then
Yep.
then the money like situation with real estate just got tight for everybody. People would just stop doing it. My grandpa's like, well, if I'm not going to be so busy with work, why don't I just like take a more active step to retirement and hang out with friends at Willow Valley, because he had a lot of
Yeah.
classmates. And that's the age, like late 70s, that if people decide to do that change, go into active living in the retirement community, that's when they do it. So they did. And I want to say this year was like 2014, 2015, in that range. And my I would say they were there for maybe 9 months. Like they lived in this like bougie, crazy, awesome apartment that was
Mm-hmm.
like just as nice and expensive as their condo. And my grandparents were my role models, not just like as people with their character, but financial prowess, just
Yeah.
absolute monsters with business. So Willow Valley, like their experience was bougie, and I'm like, okay, this is kind of lame, but I also think it's good for you. You're in all these clubs. But my grandma had a stroke when she was on the toilet and in the middle of the night, and broke both of her ankles, and just completely like physically and mentally just kind of crushed and collapsed.
Yeah.
So we thought she was like a goner 7 years ago. Then she had another stroke a couple months later, and she had maybe one or two or three or four or five. Who knows how many other ones after that? But she got what I mean, Broca's and Wernicke's aphasia, and then I would say that is in the same category in family structure as dementia. So when you said that that's what your father passed, I wasn't aware of that, but I can completely relate
Yeah.
how that works. How someone who just a couple of years before was my main
Yep.
conversational family member, and now like can't really talk to me.
Yeah.
But every time I walked in, she'd be singing and dancing, and she would like come. She would almost reverse age or have like glimpses of being
Yeah.
healthy again upon seeing me in visitation.
Yep.
But I knew that most of the time she was just kind of like existing. And she was
Yep.
someone that I would say taught me what grace and class was. So for her to live the life that she said, because her mother lived in the exact same hallway in Willow Valley, the assisted living, and she goes, I'm never going to be in that position. If I am, smother me with a pillow and kill me.
Hmm.
And it's like, be careful what you be careful what you think,
Yeah.
because your thoughts will become reality. Like if you fixate on what you fear and you don't want to happen,
It
it might
happens.
just freaking happen.
Yeah.
So no one is going to kill my grandma. Like she's just, but I, so she passed, I want to say the 14th or the 11th of December is 18. Yeah. 11th of December. And she was like, in the same room as my mom and my dad. They kind of like held her while she passed. And she just kind of was like, okay, it's time.
Yep.
And at 91,
It's time. It can be
and
time.
you had 7+ years, like,
Yep.
I mean, I have an ancestor. My grandfather's cousin was Admiral James Stockdale, and he's in like Good to Great and some of these other books. I'm reading finished Courage is the Calling by Ryan Holiday, and he has like a whole chapter in there.
Awesome.
I never met him, but like, if you Google search my name, unfortunately his speeches pop up and shit like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
My grandfather did it back in the Naval Academy. So he was a POW in Vietnam for 7.5 years, like the highest ranking military official as a POW, and there from the beginning of the war to the very end. So the entirety of the war, he was just like in the worst human conditions possible. And he
Yeah.
rallied troops and kind of stayed, kind of hung tough and showed a lot of people what toughness was, and, love of country and love of fellow man over oneself. Became a Stoic philosophy professor. And I kind of look at my grandma as like the same shit,
Hmm.
just held it down for the family in a retirement home best she could. But she just kind of waited for the most graceful time to tap out. Like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? And she put everyone in front of herself. So um again though, it didn't give me I was like the second closest female in my life. The third closest, the bronze medalist, who I cared about the most, passed maybe 6 weeks before. Then the silver medalist, my grandma, like second closest.
Yeah.
And I still was like, all right, I got work to do. Like
Yeah. Life
life
doesn't
goes
stop.
on. My kids,
Yep.
life doesn't stop. I got my kid crying, and I got this business to build, and it sucks, but it is what it is. You know what I mean?
Yep.
I kind of like felt like I could just submerge the emotions. And so with my mom's kid situation, it was similar but different because after she got, I want to say the J&J or Moderna, I think it was the Johnson and Johnson vaccine.
Mm.
She had this like crazy side effect to it where she had a gene in her body that was inactive and that became active and made her blind all of a sudden at 61 years old, 62.
Yeah.
And she was, I mean, I would say she struggled with like mental health for like a while, and that made it so much worse.
I bet.
I'm only laughing because it's just like how much shit can someone
Yeah.
tolerate when it comes to their mental health. And my mom had to put up with me growing up, so that was probably mental
Yes,
health
she's
skills.
already tested.
Yeah, so she was already tested. So, but this was not great. So she got to actually meet Skylar, my fiance, and like see her, and Skylar was with me the whole time that kind of degenerate. And there were so many times, Matt, where I had to be like on suicide watch of like, hey, you still have something to live for. Like there's still hope.
Yeah.
Like trying to be her cheerleader and just trying to get her to like mentally, spiritually not just succumb to sadness.
Hmm.
She's like, I just wish God would take me away. And, before that, um, and I'll touch on the funeral part. I guess this is the reason I'm saying this is to build up to um I one of the beliefs I have is that people usually die when it's their quote unquote divine time, like
Mm.
the right time. Like
Hmm.
there's no coincidences and there's nothing that's rushed or forced. Nature just behaves in such a
It
way.
knows. Yeah.
And she was, I would say, a pretty popular lady, very involved. She always had like 3 jobs, just always staying busy from 5 a.m. to like 9 p.m. She was doing something, serving somebody,
Yeah.
right? And then from 9 p.m. it was like, all right, I'm gonna retire and you gotta get up in the morning. Gotta get
Yeah.
up. That's what she
Yeah.
always said. You gotta get the show on the road. And so when she was going through that, she became completely dependent upon my dad, and my dad being in his like mid 60s, like low 60s, was not retired, but like he was a primary caregiver to someone that's disabled all of a sudden.
Hmm.
So they spent more time together than any two people humanly could. Like, you work in your office all day and, Helen's upstairs with the kids, but like, you don't have to make
Yeah.
her a sandwich or help her
Yep.
to brush her teeth or comb her hair.
Yep.
So that's what my mom and dad went through for like a year and a half. And in that time, because of what she was going through, I won't say she lost a lot of friends, but it's a lot of people can't relate. Like
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
kind of shit you go through scares people, a lot of people. And my mom is more of an introvert. Like she's always outside the house, so she talks to people that she interacts with, but she won't pick up the phone and call. Like
Hmm.
she'd be the person that says, "Oh, you didn't call me for a week. Are you mad at me?" I'm like, "I was busy. You could have called me." And she goes, "No, no, I don't want to impose." Like
Yeah.
that's the way that she was,
Yep.
even before she was blind. But we got so close when my daughter was came, because that was the only time that she had, in her words, something to live for, like something
Yeah.
that made her have joy and not just depression all the time. So when my daughter was born, my mom was the first person there. She said, "Get your ass in the car and we're going to the hospital." Um, so yeah, we got a lot tighter when my kid was born, which is cool because I moved to where I moved, so I would be closer to family and have that
Yeah.
network.
Yep.
And for about 4 months, her life got a lot better, but she kept saying that she does not want to dance at my wedding.
Yeah.
She doesn't want people seeing her blind in public and being in pictures, and she just hated all that attention.
Yeah.
She went to the baby shower, and it was a really tough experience for her. And she's like, "Fuck this! Like, I'm so anxious, and
Yeah.
I don't want to be around all these people I can't see, and I don't necessarily know, and who's there, who's that." So the thing about it that I reflect on today is a lot of the pictures when she went blind were just her frowning,
Yeah.
just like candid, like clearly not happy.
Yeah. Not
Like
feeling it.
Thanksgiving, she just this huge frown on her face, not feeling it. And I'm, it is what it is. Like I'm not bargaining with the loss, but she would refer to one of her only friends that stuck around and was really there for her as her angel. She goes, "Oh my God, she's so positive and she's so fun. And she comes and picks me up and we go to lunch and we get her nails done and she helps me get my hair cut. Like we just gossip and talk about our kids and grandkids. And she just actually had a girlfriend
Yeah.
that she was close with, but when she went through some shit, she got a lot closer with.
Yeah.
And this person was very, very spiritual and would comment. But she became Facebook friends with me. Her name was Kira. Would comment on things, talking about like Jesus loves you and this is a blessing, and just very like evangelically Christian.
Yep.
And I like didn't think of my mom as she was spiritual. Like one of the stories I told it at the funeral, and I really I think it's important for people to know is um there was a time where I left corporate world and I was like, I would say I don't want to say faking it till I make it, but I was like, I'm gonna be in my own entrepreneurial. And I took like a couple, maybe 1 or 2 months to not like commit to a new thing and just live on savings and kind of figure it out and focus on my health and hobbies. And in that time, my mom goes, "Hey, do you want to go to Canada?" And I was like, "Sure. Like, when are you and dad going?" She goes, "I don't want to bring dad. I want you to drive me to visit your aunt, my aunt
Hmm.
Diane, who had passed
Yeah.
this past couple months." And I said, "Oh, I'll go tomorrow. I don't care." So we packed up and we did. And we just spent like maybe 4 or 5 days on the trip.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things where like she was just so happy to be with me, spending like 10 hours in a car. And we
Hmm.
just talked and talked and talked. And we weren't necessarily super close. Like we were close, like, but we got so much closer through that trip just from spending the time and going and deep diving and talking about the history of both of our lives. And the future and goals and what's important to me and what's important to her. And
Mm.
on the way up, she's like, "Yeah, if I die tomorrow, I'll be okay with that because I raised you and your brother, and you two turned out all right. You're both
Yeah.
educated. You're both not degens. Well, to her knowledge, she wasn't really
Yeah, yeah,
degen.
exactly.
You
As far as
know,
she needed to know, you're good.
she goes, "Oh, I've checked all the boxes as far as a mother, and I'm proud of you too. And I can go knowing that my earthly mission is done." And so we didn't know that my aunt had a drinking problem
Yeah,
until we went there in 2019 when my mom was like almost 60. Like she had no fucking clue like what
yeah,
was going on. And basically we went to like the liquor. We were hanging out and just catching up. And sometimes there's like a time and a place for alcohol. We were drinking and just socially, like nothing crazy. And I would say that because I was named after their father, like my maternal grandfather was named Ross. And he passed when I was, I don't know, 10 or 11 of esophageal cancer. And in Canada, people that say they want Canadian healthcare did not have my life experience.
yeah,
It was totally preventable and they were just dragging their fucking feet and it was so slow. And he was a 260-pound, 6'2", like just the hairiest chest, the thickest, like damn
yeah,
cop mustache you'll ever see. Just like he just looked like a man. He was
yeah.
like a more French Don Fry, if you know who that is. And my grandfather died at 145 pounds
Wow.
because they just fucked up the treatment for him.
Yeah,
And we went and we used to go up to Canada once or twice a year and we went for his like passing and funeral. And then it just became like too much, like the family, like with my grandmother, like that's who held the family together, always had the holidays, always had
yeah,
making sure people were there. With my grandfather, everyone would come in to this small house in rural Canada to go in and see and be family, and everyone got along, everyone had a great time. When he passed, it wasn't that way. So I felt like a lot of my family and connection to Canada died in my
yeah,
early teens. So anyway, I say that to say that we're sitting outside having like just a normal day and hanging out. My mom, my aunt, and I are just talking, having lunch, and for some reason, this like moment I'll never forget that there was like a butterfly that landed like right in the center of the table, and like my aunt is super super spiritual, over the top emotional person. If
hmm
anything, when everyone thinks that I exaggerate or I'm just like intense, I am like a fraction of what my aunt is when it comes to just like expressing emotion and like everything's
yeah,
like a huge deal. Like
yeah,
everything's the best. She's like a maternal Donald Trump when it comes to exaggerating shit.
yeah,
But when she goes, shh, shh, shh. Listen, do you see this butterfly? This is daddy saying hello that he's with us right now. And I don't know why, but like I just started like crying. I was like, what the fuck? I was like,
yeah,
there's just a butterfly. Like it was the most like beautiful day, peaceful time that I'm with my godmother and my mother, and they're like having at the time like this just cathartic like
hmm
session of grieving over my grandfather that took them 17 years to have.
yeah,
Like they didn't get over their grandfather, like they didn't have peace with that for like 17 years.
yeah,
And I just like started talking about what I had learned in philosophy and my life experiences and just talking, just philosophizing, pontificating,
yeah,
saying stuff. And they're like, "Oh, I think daddy is speaking through you. How are you so wise? You're like old, like you're wise beyond your years, and he's giving us a message through you." And like, I don't know, maybe that's true, but to them it
yeah,
was very true.
yeah,
To them it was very true. So I felt like I helped to give my aunt and my mother closure with their father.
hmm
That was a memory that is just like it's worth
yeah,
more than your career.
yeah,
It's worth more than money. So later in the trip, we went back to the liquor store and we were going to give my one family member, so my aunt's daughter, just like super HGTV, like redid her whole house. Beautiful, like beautiful house, like outdoor hot tub, pool, just like super like it's a small town and she's got the nicest house in the whole town.
yeah,
I don't know. So we were there and we were going to give her a gift of like a handle of her favorite liquor.
hmm
Hey, you and your husband enjoy this for a couple weeks. My aunt drank the whole fucking thing. And then she's like, the next day, she's like, I'm okay to drive. And like, we almost got hit by like an 18 wheeler.
yeah,
She just like didn't see it. I'm like, what the fuck is going on?
yeah,
I was like, okay, this is a problem. And then when we went to leave, she was like crying hysterically, like, don't go, don't go, don't go. Because we didn't realize that like her other relationships with family kind of like split almost.
Yeah.
And I talked to other family later, and I'm not going to say names or whatever, put on blast, but they told me more of what happened and how that experience that I had was like not uncommon. And that's
Yeah.
why they don't give her money. They don't buy, like, they don't have
Yeah.
alcohol near why, because she was like in recovery. We didn't know she was in recovery.
Yeah.
Like, it's not my, I didn't know. Right. So that was my first like glimpse at like what alcoholism like was in a family sense. So
Yeah.
anyway, fast forward to why that matters now is like that trip made me and my mom close, and that trip gave my my family closure, and I helped to give my mom closure. So I feel like I was a good, like, I feel in my mind, if I would have died, which I don't wish anyone's children to die before their parents,
Yeah.
but my mom would have been like, he's an angel, he's going to heaven, he's fucking
Yeah.
awesome,
Yep.
you know. So her angel Kira was driving her to get a wedding dress in the middle of the day, and my brother was just randomly home. He never is home. He lives in South Carolina as a professor, but he had winter break. And he said that she kept like listening to her watch, like, is it time to go? Is it time to go? Is it time to go? Like, in a hurry, in a rush, so excited, peak anticipation of her life.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's the holidays, she saw my brother, she had Christmas with my daughter and me and Skylar. She was going to have like this date that they set for like weeks and weeks and weeks, and she couldn't be more excited. And then coming home from lunch or whatever they were doing shopping, she gets on a straight road that the speed limit's like 35 or 40, where there wasn't really a dangerous intersection. She gets killed instantly in a head-on collision in the passenger seat with her angel. And my brother called me, and I just was like in denial. I was like, no. And he was shook because he told me that mom was in the emergency room for a car crash. I'm like, what the fuck does that mean? Because sometimes if you're in a car crash, they might just, as a protocol, like take
Yeah.
you there.
Check
And I'm
out.
like, okay, this sucks. Like, this is not great. Like, this is not good. I didn't tell anyone at the time. I was like, all right, I guess I'm gonna keep working through it. And then he gets a knock on the door from the police and says that she died on impact. And they were just like, what the fuck? You know, it was one of those things where you just like can't process what
Yeah.
that means. Um, so that was the hardest blow I think I've ever had, because it was, everything was up and up. It was the peak of like the relationship with my mom, and she was the
Yeah.
peak of her light in the dark. Like, she had such a dark time, and it was the peak happiness for her. Um, so it was like, why is this timing?
Yeah.
Selfishly, I'm like, why now? Like, you
Yeah.
needed to come and see my kid on Saturdays. Like, we saw each other every week, and she would have the whole day with my kid. And like, for me, selfishly, I got to go and do my thing, and she
Yeah.
got to do her
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
We were a family, and I got to, like, get help. But life is not all about Ross, and it's
Yeah.
not all about our own story and our own perspective. And a couple days before that, I thought I was going to need ACL surgery because I blew my knee out. So I was physically crippled. And now I was faced with the reality that, like, oh shit, I live here. I see her all the time. I'm like the closest relative besides my dad. So I had to go and do stuff. Like, I booked the pastor. I helped my dad with the obituary. I helped my dad with, I did like the Facebook management. I
Mm-hmm.
like had to do all the communication to the family. Just helping my dad, making sure he was okay.
Yeah.
Um, and I couldn't put off suffering. So I felt like with my aunt and my grandma, I was like, I can do that later.
I
Like,
can
it's not real.
justify why it's not that big of an impact.
But the closest impact was when my mother got, I thought originally that it must have been someone with a DUI, because on a Wednesday in the middle of the day,
Yeah.
middle of the week,
Straight road.
it's straight. It's a beautiful day, sunny, no bad road conditions.
Yeah.
There's literally nothing that like makes sense as to why that would happen.
Yeah.
Like, I have done some shitty things driving. Like, I am not the world's best driver.
Yeah.
Like, speeding and just stupid shit when I was younger. But I never hurt anyone, never hurt myself.
Yeah.
And like, statistically, if you want to be like, oh yeah, man can understand everything given enough data, there's no,
Yeah.
you cannot predict the future.
Yeah.
You cannot influence the outcome. Like, I would say that the funeral was cathartic, and I felt like, it was a good homage to her life, and I was like on the path of healing, um and Matt, talking with you because you went through something where you lost your father. One of my best friends lost his mother from cancer. I had another friend that started a business, and he lost his mother, I think, in junior high. And I had another good friend from my wrestling team that lost his father 2 years ago. Don't know how he passed, but I'm sure it was unexpected.
Yeah.
And I had like this huge outreach from people that like do care, right?
Yeah.
So like I had so many conversations with people that took the time to either send flowers or show up to the funeral or just checking how I was doing, that just showed me that they care. And then having other people that went through similar shit of losing a parent was like, I'm not alone in this. Like,
Hmm.
I'm not the only person that has to experience this. And like being able to step up to the plate and be a good son to my dad and brother to my brother, and just appreciating just how much like my daughter doesn't know what's going on,
Hmm.
that was huge. And then knowing that I have a job to do, which is like be a family person first.
Yeah.
Like my job is important, sure. And I might not make any money in the next month. And I have to come to terms with that reality because I'm not a robot who can just turn off
Yeah.
their emotions and like I'm
Yep.
gonna go prospect and do all these cold
Yeah.
bitches. Like some days it's hard to get out of bed
Yeah.
physically because of my knee and mentally because of my bullshit.
But yeah.
And I'm just like, you know, so there was days and days and days and weeks and weeks and weeks. And it's not like there's any one triggering moment that makes it easier. You get past it. And
Yeah.
when people ask me, oh, like, how are you doing? Like 95 to 99% of the time, I'm good.
Yeah.
There's glimpses of time where you just have this memory or something makes you think of her, or you see something that's like someone else is suffering, and you're like, fuck.
Yep.
You're like, that got me good.
Fuck yeah. Yep.
You know what I mean? So like I can do normal human being things. Like my leg is getting better. I don't have to get surgery. Like there's
Yeah.
these things that I would take for granted is like, okay, that's expected. I'm like, that is just like birthday cake, amazing, tasting so good. The good news is so much better.
Yep.
And the bad things that happen, I'm just so much better at dealing with negative emotions.
Yeah.
And like when people are going through it, I'm just like, I can relate.
Yeah.
I have more empathy. I have a softer heart. I have different priorities. Like I always prioritize family, even back in August when I left like my career thing and to do that. But also there was a tinge of selfishness, like I could do better and I can make this
Hmm.
money, and there's a selfish motivation.
Hmm.
When your whole life gets flipped upside down, being selfish is the worst thing you can do,
Yeah.
because then you're disconnected from others, you're disconnected from God. And I think the only way to cure sadness and grief is through love. So it's not like self love. People are like, oh, I'm gonna go to the spa and I'm gonna go and
Yeah.
read a book and like just take
Like
it
that
easy.
feels warm and fuzzy for a little bit,
That's like
but
self comfort. Like
it's not everlasting. Yeah.
self love is connecting with old friends and being like, just sending like a buddy from high school, like, hey man, I hope you're doing okay.
Yep.
Um, self love really looks like being a better father.
Yeah.
Like not bitching when I have to wake up in the middle of the night to change a diaper and feed a baby. Being
Yeah.
grateful that I get to do that, that I'm
Yep.
okay to do that. Self love, it looks like getting your spouse flowers because she's stressed out. Where I mean, I don't say never, but I wouldn't think of doing that before,
Yep.
and just saying thank you for her putting up with my grieving ass,
Yep.
putting up with my shit. And I will be completely transparent. In January was the worst business month I had since I was 14 years old
Yeah.
financially. And I'm not saying that like, oh, poor me. I'm like, I'm so blessed and thankful for having like that loss.
Yeah.
I'm thankful for that because now I have the perspective of like, I've already lost. Like
Yeah.
it doesn't, I'm like, okay, if it gets worse than this, at least I'm in that mindset where I can handle it,
Yeah.
because I'm handling it right now.
I'm getting through it right now. Yeah.
And the last thing I'll say on this kind of monologue is that it gets better. Like
Yeah.
you get to see that, God or whatever higher power you may or may not believe in puts you on this planet to love other people and serve other people,
Yeah.
not to wallow in your misery,
Yeah.
and not to close them off and not to
Bring
be
them down.
entitled and think that you deserve things. No, everything is a gift. And if you don't appreciate the gift, you lose the gift.
Yeah.
Like, I there was a hymn at my grandmother's funeral that I now try to memorize, and I sing to my daughter before she goes to sleep, in the garden. And the premise of it is like you're born and you're like alone, but like you're not, because God's there and he's like walking you through it, and it's just like this joyful event.
Yep.
And then at the end of the day, like when the sun goes down, you're sad it's over, but like it's okay because it's not over.
Yeah.
And just having these like different, I don't want to say like totems, but like things that you can hit your memory to, that paint it in a way that like empowers you and fuels you and gives you gratitude and gives you love,
Yeah.
is the only way that I think you can get over grieving, because you don't ever really get over it. You just go on.
Yeah.
And it's how you go on that really matters. And I feel like I'm going on in a way that would make my mom proud for the most part. I mean, my grandma would just put up with my shit and say that you're going to be all right.
Yeah. No
And
matter what you
my
do.
and my godmother would be like, "Oh, that's my godson." Like, even if I do bad things like drink too much, like, "Oh yeah, he can handle his liquor like me." Like, no, I don't need that.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't need that
Don't
kind of
encourage
encouragement.
me. Yeah. Do not
Like, don't
encourage
I don't
this.
need that. I don't need
Yeah.
that. But like the idea with that is like this unequivocal love. And my
Yeah.
mother's favorite number was 3. So I feel like I have 3 angels in the course of 90 days.
Yeah.
And it made my spiritual experience a lot different, because I was always like theoretically spiritual, but now I like live it every day
Yeah.
biologically, because I feel like I have to.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I believe in angels and I believe in higher power, but it's not just like one of those things that you check a box and you say you do as like what you should do.
Yeah.
Um,
You
it's
gotta feel it deep.
it's like I can relate to other people's suffering in a way that I could never relate to before,
Yeah.
because it's I think old Ross would have been really pissed out off to find out that the person that hit my mom was a 29-year-old with like very close to, if not absolutely millionaire parents, that lived at home and had 3 DUIs within 3 years, and just like had this life that was like, from
Kush.
outside looking in, cush, like just chilling. I'm
Yeah.
like, like old Ross would have been like angry and like wanting to
Yeah.
retaliate, like just want to be like, mm.
Yep.
And new Ross is just like, some people suffer too much and some people suffer too little, and you can go on for a long time, but sooner or later God's going to cut you down.
Yeah.
And I think what old Ross with business thought that I was this reason behind these blessings and successes, and oh yeah, of course I can do this. I grew something from 0 to 10 million. I can do it
Mm-hmm.
again. Blah 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 blah. Like
Mm-hmm.
just telling me this narrative that like it's on me, and
Yeah.
like really it's just luck. It's like God like gave me
Yeah.
opportunities that I guess for better or worse like took, and I'm like, oh my
Did
God.
something with. Yep.
Yeah, so if I ever want any form of material success ever, like just know that it's not like I'm not the procuring cause of that.
Yep.
I should be the grateful receiver of any success,
Yeah.
and the humble servant if I don't receive it. Like separating the actions from the input, because
Yeah.
the output is I believe a higher power's determination,
Yeah.
and I can just try and be the best business person, friend, father, husband, son, brother. It's like we only exist in relation to one another. And from a metaphysical, like theoretical physics standpoint, um, that was what I studied in college.
Mm-hmm.
The idea is like relational block world. Like things only exist insofar as how they relate to other things. And like my mother is an angel because I have this memory of her, of showing me an example of what unending, enduring love is.
Mm-hmm.
Not that, oh yeah, well sometimes she would get drunk and piss me off, or
Yeah.
not that she would, oh, she could have quit smoking cigarettes or whatever. Like that
Yeah.
doesn't, those habits,
Stupid
those
shit.
things, those are so fucking stupid. Like um she's an angel because everything that I want out of life, she wanted for me first.
Yep. And instilled in you without you even probably knowing it at the time that like this is gonna come to fruition someday. Like I'll appreciate this in the future, not knowing that like that's why like with my dad, same thing, dude. Like I'm the dad I am because of the dad he was, but growing up, I had no desire to be a dad. Like I've said people all the time, if you would have asked me at 32 or 33. So 7, 8 years ago, do you want kids and a family? I'd have been like, fuck no. Like I want to be on Forbes magazine covers and I want to build big businesses and travel and be interviewed by famous people. Like that was my goal, like 20s and early 30s. And like my dad was my hero like through all that, but I had no aspirations to be like him because he worked a basic job, like, went clocked in, clocked out, did his thing. And like I wanted to be like him in certain ways with like, but not great, like kind of really didn't want to because I was like, he's a family man. I don't really want to be a family man. Like he worked corporate. I don't want to work corporate. So like I respected and admired him, but I didn't really want to be like him because I was like, I have different visions, but he was building me from day one to be in a position that now at, whatever, I was 36 when we had our first kid. And I'm like, oh wow, like this is phenomenal. Like I could be a great dad and like pretty quickly because my dad poured all that into me for like the first 32 years of my life before I even realized I wanted to do anything like this. So yeah, dude, being a parent is something else, man. It's like to pour into your kids before they even realize you're pouring into them and to do that for their entire lives without, I mean, shit, I put my parents through hell for 20, whatever, 32 years. Like, it's not hell like the whole time. I was a good kid up until like 16, 17. But then there was 20 years where like I put them through the ringer. Like, my dad was in a courtroom with me, like, getting, like, am I going to jail or am I doing community service? Like, sitting there by my side and like the waiting room getting called in, like, just kind of looking at me, shaking his head. I'm like, fuck, I can't believe I'm sitting here, like, putting you through this. Like, and they do all that before you even have the ability to like, and that's my biggest regret with my dad by far. And I got some of this out towards the end. I was able to verbalize some of this to him towards the end before he, maybe he understood all of it, even though he couldn't communicate back that he was understanding it, was my deep, deep appreciation, like for exactly who he made me. And like deep, deep apologies. It's like, fuck, dude, sorry. I wasn't on point my entire life. Like, sorry, I went so far off course for 15, 20 years and put you through all that pain. But like, look at me now. Like I hit the goal line and like I scored a touchdown, like in the game of life. And like, now I got a wife and kids and like a decent house. And like, look, we did it. But like, now he's gone. It's like, fuck, like, now I can't be like, hey dad, come over and like hang out and, in the living room and roll around with all four kids and do all this stuff. And like, have a big smile on your face because your oldest son like figured it out and like all the stuff that you poured into him came to fruition. All your hard work was worth it. So I know what you mean, man. That's the toughest thing for me for sure. And like I live in a way that like I want to make him proud and I know I am, but there's a big difference between, and that's what, I get sad sometimes. People are like, oh, he's watching, and I'm like, I get it. And like deep down I feel that and I know that, but like there's a big difference between like sitting in a living room watching him watch what I've created. And like to not have that now, that's devastating at times. Like those are the times where I just like break down and start crying is like on a Saturday morning or a Sunday morning, like kids are running in the living room, dancing, playing, music's playing, sun shining through. And I'm like, fuck, if I could just have my dad sitting here with me right now, watching this, like cloud nine. And I know he's up there watching. It's like I find peace with that, but nothing like seeing his face or like watching him smile and play with our kids, like in the present moment. That's where it hurts the most. And like those moments where it's like you said, 99% of the time, how you doing? I'm good. Like I'm super appreciative of everything. Like I got perspective on it. Like loss is lost. We all experience it. No one goes through life untouched. We're all gonna like punch our ticket at some point. I get it. It's all part of it. But there's those 2% of times where it's just like it hits you like a ton of fucking bricks, and it's like this is permanent. Like it's never gonna happen again. Where like you get to have that joyous moment in real life with your parent. And it's fucking sucks.
I used to always ask people the time machine question: if you could go back in time and you could change something, what would you do differently? And the answers that I would get were usually either I wouldn't change anything because that's what made me where I am today.
Yep.
Or they would say I would invest in Bitcoin, or I would invest in Google, or
Yep.
I would invest in Apple so I could have passive investment making me tons of outsized returns.
Yep.
I was asked that in a podcast not long ago, and I said I would have been a better son
Yeah.
because I was a fucking asshole. Like
Yep.
I just can beat myself up for days if I wanted to, and I have. I
Yeah.
already got over it of how I was just a shitty fucking son. And like I told someone recently that you don't really become a quote unquote man. Like, yeah, I was always a masculine dude, but like I
Yeah.
wasn't like the most responsible person until I had a kid, and then I had to be responsible and I had to take on that like paternal role.
Mhm.
That was transformative, but I feel like you don't really become, I don't want to say that like my standards are different now that I had to bury a parent,
Yeah.
because it's like I am that for the future. Like
Them.
there is no, like it's like burning the ships in the harbor. Like there's no me going back.
Yeah.
Like I'm only that thing as best as I can going forward. There's no calling someone up and hey, I need you to babysit. Like I am taking care of this responsibility.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, if I had to go back in time, I would have been uh nicer to my mom.
Yeah.
I was,
Um,
I wasn't the worst, but I wasn't definitely the best.
yeah.
And
Same.
the other thing that I have perspective on that I would definitely say that America has this like entitlement problem. It's an epidemic of we think we deserve where we're at.
Yeah.
Because I had an immigrant mom who grew up in Canada, in rural Canada place, and if you wanted to have upward trajectory, you worked for the government, you got a pension, and there
Yeah.
was stability. Not like you either worked for a factory or you worked for the government, and that was what you did. There
Yep.
wasn't entrepreneurship, there wasn't huge money. There was like you're getting taxed 50+%.
Yep.
Good luck. Like everyone's in this shithole. Everyone's in this, like, in my opinion, socialism is shitty.
Yeah.
Everyone's in this together. And my mom, like, her second language was English. She didn't know how to really speak it fluently, perfectly when she moved here.
Yeah.
So there is this study that like mental illness and depression and anxiety and stuff is so prevalent in first generation immigrants. Like my mom burned the ships to make me.
Yeah.
She left her home, all of her family, 100% of her family, 100% of her friends to presumably start a family in America, and I was the first child.
Yeah.
So like she sacrificed her first 30 years of life, 29, 28, 29 years of life, so that I could have a life.
Yeah.
And she worked 3 jobs and stayed at home and made sure that my laundry was done and I had something to eat and I had someone to pick me up and just did the shit work.
Everything. Yeah.
Yeah, I had never wanted for like necessities ever.
Yep.
I always had someone there, and seeing through what it's like to have my kid for the first time, that shit is fucking brutal. And I
It's
have family,
hard. Yeah.
I have friends and family nearby.
Yep.
She had none of that.
Yeah.
So understanding just the sacrifice that parents go through, it takes a whole different perspective. Like you said that you didn't want to be like your dad because he was punching a clock, but I guarantee you that your dad did that so that
Oh, he worked
he
two
could get
jobs so we could. Yeah.
for you.
Yep.
Not
And
that it was his dream was to have you. His dream
yeah.
wasn't to have this job or this career or
Nah.
whatever. And that
And
was my mom's dream.
he always worked the jobs too, where he would make sure that like weekends he could be at our basketball games because he was keeping the books on the score table and like all that. Every coaching baseball games, he was always like the job where he could be out by 4, like 3:30 or 4, so he could coach the baseball team and be at every freaking practice. Like he built his work life around his family life, and that's what is my like biggest like stake in the ground, like flag in the sand, is like family first. And like if it means I have to sacrifice myself, my work, my whatever, because it's put my family ahead of that, like done. Like not even a question asked about, because that's my dad did it in a slightly different way, but the exact same way, just different like mediums, different avenues. But yeah, it's crazy how much you give and then how little the kids appreciate it. I say it like you'll probably, you maybe already do. Your daughter's how old? Not quite a year.
6 months
6 months. Yeah. And you maybe already do. Like I have conversations with Amelia, Caroline, my 2.5, 4.5-year-old, where I'm like, you don't know how good you have it. Like you got a mom who stays home with you. You got a dad who works from home. Like I'm always here. Mommy's always there. Like you're getting like taken this, like they have freaking pinnacle of like a childhood right now. I'm like, you don't know how good you have it. And like,
you live in America.
yeah. And like, I can say that.
We're not
like,
getting bombed.
It'll probably take them till they're like 20, 25, 30 like us before they're like, I had it really fucking good. But like, hopefully one day, like we're looking back on it now, like hopefully one day they look back on it and they're like, man, my mom and dad like really poured everything into us and like gave us every like advantage they could in life. And I'm sure they will, because we'll continue to bless them with all those gifts and stuff. But it's funny how you do it without the recognition, and despite like the friction, like you said, man, like I put my parents through hell for 15 years and they still poured into me constantly. And it's just like, how do you do that? And now we have kids, and like, that's how you do it. Like you're like, not you have to, but like when you're a good parent, like you're a good human being, like you have to, like you have no choice. Like they're your fucking
Yeah.
kids. Like you do it no matter what. But yeah, going through it now, looking back, hindsight 2020, it's like shit. I wish I could have like gone from like high school athlete to like either just good human being or like college athlete, good human being or like whatever, but like stayed the course of like staying on the course as opposed to drugs and crimes and all the other stuff that I put them through. Where they must have just been watching me being like, how the fuck did you end up here? Like, that's not the example I set. And I'm like, yeah, I'm not sure how I ended up there, but here I am and we'll fight our way through it and get to the end.
And one of the quotes that a Battlefield member told me was that the story is in the suffering. Like
Yeah.
every person that's like, this is why you do the Battlefield Project podcast, I'm sure, is because
Yeah.
every person that from the outside looking in, we can admire and has these virtuous traits that we're like, oh, that's badass, that's admirable, I want to be like
Mm-hmm.
that, has a story that they overcame suffering.
Yeah.
And, I would say that, would I say that today I'm thriving? I don't have, a $50,000 a month income
Yeah.
where I'm taking care of my family and on my way to be a millionaire and this huge
Yep.
successful guy. But I have a family that loves me. I have time where I can take care of my daughter. I have time where, um, the bills are paid.
Exactly.
Like I'm
Yep.
not like I have everything.
Yeah.
Although I don't have the goals that I put on my vision board all
You have it.
accomplished,
Yep.
I have everything.
Yep.
And I think to thrive is more um
Appreciate what you have right now. It's right
as a
in front of you.
perspective.
Yeah.
Like there's this I have a tattoo, and it's based off of like Admiral James Stockdale's tenure in Vietnam. And it was like, retain faith that you'll prevail in the end regardless of difficulties, at the same time confront the most brutal facts of your current realities. And that Stockdale paradox means to me that, like, the way to get over something is to go through it.
Yep.
Like, you can't get over sadness and suffering and pain and trials and tribulations and obstacles unless you just go through them. And the only way to go through them is to have optimistic, pragmatic faith and confidence in God, in yourself, in your ability to deal with reality as it is, not as you hope it should be or as you think it should be or as you wish it would be.
Yep.
And I swear, Matt, like, we suffer and we're sad and we're, feeling bad sometimes. And God just laughs because of all the blessings that we don't know we're going to get.
Yeah. Or all the blessings that we currently have that we're just neglecting and forgetting about at that moment because we're focused on some other shiny object that's out there. And he's like,
or the impact that we have on other people that we don't know we have on those people.
Exactly right.
Like,
yep.
I guarantee you that the impact that I took away from having that lunch with my mom and my aunt, no one predicted it. No one planned it. It was as spontaneous as it gets. And I'll have this kernel of a peaceful spiritual memory forever. And my mom and aunt will never know because they're fucking dead. So, but they're angels to me. So I've got 3 angels. And for me, like the struggle is loss, but I've gained so much from that. Like, I feel like I lost 3 people that I love the most, but I gained like years and years and years and years and years of experience of dealing with life.
Yeah. That you can now share with people who are still in your life, specifically like your little human being that you're raising.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Awesome, man. Well, let's wrap it up here. That was a quick hour. I like that flew by. I had a feeling it would. That's why this isn't like, I don't care if it was 20 minutes, 30 minutes like the normal ones. I was like, I just want to get on here and talk and
appreciate the time, man. And I hope that, whoever is listening takes it as like, you are not alone in your suffering.
Yeah. I think what you just said at the end was perfect. I'm not gonna be able to paraphrase it, but as you were saying, I'm like, that'll be the quote that I pull out that I share with this episode, because that is it, man. We all suffer. Like if it's a loss of a parent, if it's a loss of a job, if it's whatever it is, man, like your own disease that you're dealing, like anything, we all suffer. And it's through that suffering that you can gain strength and then help other people. Because really, I say it all the time, but like what else are we on this earth to do besides help other people? Like if you're really just trying to get through life, like to serve your own needs and purposes and goods, fuck off. Like
Yeah.
you're missing the point. Like you're gonna die someday, and you're gonna answer to something somewhere, some way, somehow, and they're gonna be like, you missed the fucking point. Like you were a human being with the ability to connect to other people, and you didn't take advantage of that opportunity to connect. Shame on you. And I feel bad for those people, because really life is about connecting with other people, showing them that you care, and lifting each other up, because really that's all we can do. All right, my brother. Thank you. For anyone watching, I hope it helped you in some form or other. I hope, if you're dealing with pain and suffering, reach out to somebody, Ross, specifically myself as well. I want to see people happy and not
The
in pain.
last thing I want to plug and say, Matt, somewhat promotional. Like, I'm not asking people to reach out to me if you're going through it. You'll find me on the internet, I promise. But if you know someone, like, one of the goals that I have professionally and is it completely changed my outlook professionally, right? I was so focused on making money. I want to make more of an impact. I've partnered with Carrie Egan, who's been in the recovery space with myinterventionist.com. I want to help people that if they know someone that's going through addiction and mental health struggles, to reach out to myinterventionist.com and get the help they need, because you could be saving your child from going to jail for vehicular homicide.
Yeah.
You could be saving someone else's mom from dying. Like, you literally are saving lives if you talk to people.
Yeah.
So it is life or death, and it's not just a business to me. It is like a mission. So
Massive ripple effect.
100%.
Yeah. Yep. I know Carrie personally. I know Ross, obviously, through this podcast and a bunch of other stuff we've done together. And yeah, you won't find two better human beings that actually care about people. So yeah, if you are addicted to something or know someone who's addiction, mental health, any kind of those struggles, I would highly suggest reach out to Carrie as well, because she pours her heart and soul and passion into what she does, and she can change lives. So
she's a rock star, man.
Yeah. So I condone that promotional plug at the end.
Thank you.
Support 100%. Yeah, absolutely, man. All right, everybody. Thank you for watching. Thanks for supporting us. Share the message with anybody that'll benefit from it. Love to everybody out there, and I'll see you on the battlefield.